My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 62 years old, and even now, after decades of holding everything together, after raising children, keeping a home, loving a man the best way I knew how, I still remember the day my world stopped spinning. I never thought I'd be the one sitting here telling a story like this. A story with bruises you can't see from the outside. A story that began with something as small as a whisper from my doctor that would burn through the life I thought I knew. She leaned in gently, placed a hand over mine, and with a voice barely louder than breath, she said, "Evelyn, you need to sit down for this." I still hear those words in my sleep. The room felt smaller. The walls felt like they were inching closer. My pulse thundered inside my ears, and my palms were suddenly damp against the cold metal of the chair. I sat, slowly, like someone was lowering a curtain over the brightest years of my life. And then she told me something that didn't just scare me. It shattered everything. My marriage, my memories, my trust. What would you do if the person sleeping beside you for 20 years had a secret only a doctor could uncover? I still ask myself that question. If you've ever believed someone with your entire heart, only to find out they handed you a broken one in return, then maybe, just maybe, you'll understand me. Because I didn't just lose a husband. I lost myself for a while. Before it all fell apart, let me take you back. Before the hospital room. Before the whispers. Before I learned that a calm life can be nothing more than a curtain hiding a fire. I lived what many would call a simple, steady life in Portland, Oregon. A pale blue house with white window frames, creaking wooden floors, and a garden my neighbors always praised in the spring. My hydrangeas bloomed like small clouds, soft, harmless, peaceful. I thought my life was just like them. My husband, Thomas, was the kind of man people admired. Handsome in a quiet, aged oak way. Soft-spoken, never rushed, never raising his voice, at least not loud enough for others to hear. He had a habit of tapping his finger against the dinner table while thinking, and I used to find it endearing. Funny how love makes gentle music out of things that later sound like warning bells. We were married for 23 years. We raised 2 children. Michael, 28 now, a teacher, kind like his late grandfather. Amelia, 32, sharp-tongued but tender-hearted. She's the one who calls me every Sunday to ask if I've eaten, even if we argued the day before. I used to believe our family was normal, safe, predictable. We cooked dinner every night, mashed potatoes on Thursdays, chicken soup when it rained, because Tom said the sound of boiling broth felt like comfort. We watched the news at 6, argued about politics sometimes, but always ended the night with him kissing my forehead like a habit carved into bone. It felt unshakable, the kind of marriage people write anniversary cards about. But I know now, stability can be an illusion, and love can be blind, painfully, stubbornly blind. There were signs, tiny ones, but I brushed them aside. A late night here, a work trip he never explained, a phone screen he tilted away when I walked into the room, little pieces, sand in the gears, cracks beneath fresh paint. I wasn't stupid, I was just in love. And sometimes love makes you look away instead of looking closer. Sometimes you cling to normal because the alternative terrifies you. If someone told me back then that a single appointment, just a routine medical visit, would peel my life open like a wound, I would have laughed. But that's the thing about life. It doesn't warn you before it breaks you. I believed everything was peaceful. Until that day, I woke up early, like always. Sunlight leaking through dusty blinds, the smell of old coffee grounds still in the air. I remember humming to myself, silly, happy, unaware, while buttoning my coat for my annual health check. Tom kissed my cheek at the doorway, a soft, casual goodbye, a touch that felt like home. I had no idea that when I walked out that door, my old life was walking away from me forever. That morning felt ordinary, unfairly ordinary for a day that would break my world. I remember locking the door, hearing the familiar click, thinking of nothing more serious than whether I had enough onions for dinner. I walked down the front steps, the air cold against my face, the kind that makes your breath visible, almost like the world exhaling secrets of its own. The clinic was only 15 minutes away. I drove slowly, music low, fingers tapping lightly against the steering wheel. A normal day, until it wasn't. Inside the waiting room, paperbacks lay scattered across a wooden table. A child played with a toy truck, the wheels scraping the tiles. People smiled politely. No one knew that I was sitting there with a life built on a card that was about to be pulled. I filled out forms, checked the time, scrolled absent-mindedly through my phone. I even laughed at a joke someone posted. I was happy, genuinely, unknowingly happy. If I had known what waited for me behind that examination room door, would I have walked in? I still don't know. The nurse called my name. Mrs. Carter. Her voice was warm, too warm for the cold that was coming. I followed her in. The room smelled of antiseptic and lavender disinfectant spray. My doctor, Dr. Monroe, greeted me like she always had, with soft eyes and a kind smile. A woman in her mid-40s, efficient but gentle, someone I trusted more than I ever trusted myself. She ran the usual tests: blood pressure, heart rate, a few general questions about my diet and energy levels. I answered automatically, unaware that she was scanning me, really scanning, with the seriousness of someone holding a truth too heavy to say casually. Then she paused, a pause so still I felt it physically. She glanced at her clipboard, then at me, really at me. Her voice softened to something almost fragile. "Evelyn, you need to sit down for this." Those words, those cursed words, they were a whisper, but they cracked like thunder across my soul. I sat, slowly. My thighs trembled against the cold paper of the examination bed. She closed the door fully, a small sound, but the world shifted with it. My breath went shallow. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. "We found something in your results," she said, not with panic, with heaviness, like someone offering truth wrapped in thorns. She explained there were abnormalities in my blood work, markers she'd rarely seen in women like me. She asked questions, one by one, like stepping stones across a river I didn't know I was crossing. "Has your husband been unwell lately? Has he mentioned any past medical conditions? Has he ever traveled alone? Overseas?" Her eyes studied me the way a person looks at a puzzle that doesn't quite fit. I answered honestly, I didn't know. He never told me much. I never asked enough. That's marriage sometimes. Blind trust dressed as love. Then she said something that turned my veins to ice. "Evelyn, your blood work shows exposure to a communicable condition, one that typically passes between long-term partners." I froze. Words blurred. Sound vanished. I could only feel. Heavy, crushing, unreal. "Exposure," I whispered. "From where?" She didn't answer immediately. She wanted me to think, to connect dots I didn't know existed. When she finally spoke again, her tone was careful, almost apologetic. "Unless you have been with someone else, this likely came from your husband." I stared at her. No thoughts. Just a silence that pressed into my lungs like weight. My husband, Thomas, the man I shared a bed with. the man whose coat still hung beside mine, the man who kissed my forehead every night. I whispered back, barely audible, "What are you saying?" She didn't say he cheated. She didn't need to. My body already knew what my mind refused to accept. Every late night, every unexplained trip, every guarded phone call. They rushed through me like shards of glass. I felt ashamed, but anger rose underneath, hot and shaking. How long had I been living beside a stranger? How long had I called betrayal love? The doctor placed her hand over mine, gently, carefully, as if I might break. "Evelyn, I'm so sorry, but you need to speak to him, and you need testing, both of you." My mouth was dry. My chest ached. I nodded, but it felt like my head belonged to someone else. When I left the clinic, the world looked wrong. Cars passed. People walked. A woman laughed loudly into her phone. Life moved, brutally indifferent. I sat in my car for 10 whole minutes, hands clenched around the steering wheel, staring at nothing. My breath came shallow, uneven. I wanted to scream, to cry, to disappear, but I did nothing. I just existed, fragile, unraveled, alone in a truth I didn't ask for. That night, I came home to the same house, but it no longer felt like mine. The coat on the rack, the framed wedding photo, his handwriting on the grocery list. Everything suddenly looked different, tainted by the possibility that the person behind it was someone I didn't truly know. Thomas sat at the kitchen table sipping tea, newspaper open, as if the world hadn't just changed. He looked up and smiled, a casual, warm smile. God, how that smile hurt. He looked at me that evening the way someone looks at a sunset they've seen 1,000 times, familiar, soft, unbothered. But all I saw was a man drowning in secrets. His voice sounded normal, too normal. "Dinner already?" he asked, folding his newspaper with that slow, deliberate motion I once found charming. I stood there, coat still on, keys cold in my hand, staring at him like I was trying to memorize his face before it morphed into the truth. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. My throat felt like it was wrapped with barbed wire. Finally, I said, quietly, "There's something I need to talk to you about." He blinked, not shocked, not fearful, just politely attentive. "Of course," he said, eyes still soft. No tremor, no guilt, nothing for me to hold on to. I almost envied him, his calmness, his ignorance of the war inside my chest. We ate in silence that night. The clink of silverware was louder than our breathing. My spoon trembled against my bowl. He noticed. "You okay?" he asked, maybe for the first time in months with genuine concern. I nodded, even though I wasn't. I lied, because I needed time. Time to think, time to breathe, time to gather the pieces of myself that had scattered across that examination room floor. After dinner, he showered. The sound of running water echoed through the hallway like a countdown. I sat at the edge of the bed, his pillow beside mine, suddenly foreign, like sleeping next to a stranger's ghost. My mind repeated the doctor's voice like a haunting refrain. "This likely came from your husband. Both of you need testing." I didn't know which part hurt more, the sickness or the secret. When Thomas returned, hair damp, smelling faintly of mint body wash and betrayal, he kissed my forehead. My body froze, instinct fighting knowledge. He didn't notice me, stiffened beneath his touch. He fell asleep within minutes, chest rising and falling with the ease of a man who carried no guilt. I lay awake for hours, the first tremor in the foundation. The next morning, I watched him get ready for work. He ironed his shirt meticulously, like always, humming under his breath. That hum, God, it cut me, because it sounded like someone who had nothing to hide. But I did. I was hiding my suspicion, my fear, my anger, and it felt like poison in my mouth. He leaned down to tie his shoes, and I found myself staring at the back of his neck, wondering how many lies rested beneath his skin, wondering who else had touched him, wondering if he ever thought of me during those secret moments, if they existed at all. When he left, I stood at the door for a long time, watching his car drive away, feeling like someone was slipping through my fingers. I cleaned the house just to keep from thinking. Dishes, laundry, floors. My hands scrubbed until my knuckles reddened, but no amount of bleach could wash away the dread. Every corner of the house held a memory. Our first Christmas, our first fight, our children learning to walk, all suddenly tinted with uncertainty. By afternoon, I finally did what fear had been begging me not to do. I went into his study. It wasn't locked. Why would it be? He had nothing to hide, right? But as I opened drawers, sifted through papers, checked old receipts, I realized something unsettling. There weren't many lies, no lipstick stains, no perfume scent, no love letters or suspicious bookings, just small things, subtle things, like scratches on an otherwise polished surface. A hotel receipt from San Diego, dated 2 years ago, listed for one person, but under a name I'd never heard him mention before. A business associate, he later called it, although I never remembered him saying it aloud. Then there were late-night calls labeled only as private number. My stomach twisted as I stared at them. There were gaps in his calendar, days he said he was with clients, yet no formal paperwork followed. Not enough evidence to accuse, but enough to doubt. And doubt is a slow poison. It doesn't kill you instantly. It erodes you molecule by molecule. Conversations with shadows. That evening, I tried again. "Tom," I said while folding laundry beside him, "where were you last Thursday after work? You came home late." He didn't even flinch. "Traffic. I told you." He had told me, and I believed him then. But now the memory felt contaminated. I pressed gently. "Why didn't you call?" He shrugged. Casual. "Phone died. Forgot my charger." Plausible. Reasonable. Too reasonable. I watched his face, calm, relaxed, while my heart pounded like war drums. It's terrifying when someone lies so smoothly you can't tell if the deception is real or if your doubt is the villain. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was losing my mind. I hated how much I wanted to believe him. Later that night, I stood in the bathroom staring at my own reflection, pale, tired, eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. I put my hand on the mirror like I was trying to touch the version of myself who existed before all this. The woman who trusted too easily. The woman who had no reason to question. I whispered, barely audible even to myself, "If he's innocent, why does it hurt so much?" Days passed, quiet, tense days filled with unspoken words. We still shared meals, still watched TV, still slept beside each other. But love had become a costume we both wore, even if only one of us knew the play was ending. Then came the moment, small, insignificant, that pulled the thread and unraveled everything. A phone buzz, a text he hid too fast. Not the action itself, but the speed, the guilt in the reflex. He tried to smile it off. "It's just work," he said. But something inside me, a voice I had ignored too long, whispered, "No, not this time. Push." So I did. "Who was that?" I asked, tone steady but eyes sharp. He looked up, kind of startled, and in that split second, I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Panic. Brief, but real. "It's nothing," he repeated, too quickly, too smooth, too practiced. My hands shook. My throat tightened. And for the first time in 23 years, I asked the question I never imagined I'd ask. "Thomas, are you hiding something from me?" He exhaled, long, tired, heavy, like someone preparing to dismantle a life brick by brick. When he exhaled like that, slow, weighted, something inside me cracked. It was the sound of a man choosing words instead of honesty. And I knew the truth wasn't going to come gently. He sat down at the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, fingers laced together. That pose, I had seen it 1,000 times. When bills were late, when our son crashed his first car, when his mother was dying. It was his thinking posture, his hiding posture. He stared at the floor for a long moment. Then he looked up at me and forced a small smile. "You're overthinking, Evelyn," he said softly, the way someone talks to a frightened animal. But my fear was no longer something he could soothe with tenderness. It was rooted now, growing. I stepped closer, arms crossed over my chest like armor. My voice trembled, but it held its shape. "No, I'm not overthinking. I'm observing, and something's wrong." His jaw tightened just slightly, but enough for me to see it. "What do you want me to say?" he asked. "That sentence. It's always the first symptom of a lie." I swallowed hard. "I want you to tell me the truth." He looked away, and that was it. My heart knew before my mind caught up. He wasn't innocent. He was calculating. There is something uniquely painful about the moment when suspicion transforms into confirmation, even without words. It feels like standing in the doorway of your own life, watching the walls crumble, knowing you were the last to notice the cracks. The clues multiply. Over the next days, life continued, as if nothing was wrong. He left for work. He kissed my cheek. He made coffee, and every gesture felt like a performance. I became a detective in my own home, quietly, carefully, shamefully. I checked his phone while he showered. Patterns emerged, dull but undeniable. Calls around midnight. Short, repeated numbers. Text deleted within minutes. Not proof, but wait. I found a second key fob in his drawer, one he never used for our car. When I asked, he said it was a spare, but his voice held the stiffness of someone speaking through metaphorical teeth. Then there were the business trips, always brief, always vague. I asked him once, "Where exactly was your last conference?" He blinked, searching for details that should have come easily. "Seattle, downtown." But he said it like he was picking a city off a shelf. And when I asked which hotel, he paused. "Too long. Marriott," he said finally, voice clipped at the edges. Later, alone, I checked the San Diego receipt again, the one with a strange name listed beside the booking. Not Seattle, not Marriott, not the truth. I felt my pulse thudding in my neck like a drum. Anger mixed with grief, a bitter, burning blend. It's strange how betrayal doesn't break you instantly. Time 05s. It softens you first, makes your bones feel rubbery, your lungs too small. Then, suddenly, you collapse under the weight of everything you refused to see. The night the mask slipped. One evening, while he cooked dinner, his phone buzzed on the counter. He turned toward the stove, just briefly, and I saw the screen light up. Not a name, not a number, just one word. Soon. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I just stared at that glowing screen, like it was a confession written in fire. He noticed. His hand froze mid-motion. Without looking at me, he slid the phone into his pocket. "Spam text," he muttered. "Nobody gets spam that says 'just soon.'" Now my suspicions had grown teeth. That night, after he fell asleep, I lay beside him wide awake, body still, mind racing. I ran my fingers over the wedding band he wore. Gold, smooth, untarnished, like a lie that had been polished for years. I whispered into the dark, not to him, but to myself. "Evelyn, what if this is real? What if you're living with a stranger?" My heart hammered. My stomach churned. I felt like the ground beneath me had turned into thin ice, and every breath cracked it more. I turned and looked at him, really looked. The man I shared a bed with. The man I trusted with every soft part of me. The man I vowed to love until my last breath. And I didn't recognize him. I used to fall asleep to the rhythm of his breathing, comforted by it. That night, each inhale sounded like a question I didn't know how to ask. I never thought silence could be so loud. The appointment that changed the tone. A week later, the doctor called again. "Evelyn, I need you and your husband to come in." Just his name beside mine made my ribs tighten. He hesitated when I told him. A flicker, small, but visible. Time 05's, "Why both of us?" He asked too quickly. I said nothing. I simply watched him, watched the gears turning behind his eyes, watched the careful calm he wore like a pressed shirt. He agreed to go, but not with a sigh of relief, with the tension of a man preparing for impact. At the clinic, we sat side by side, close enough to touch, far enough to feel continence between us. Dr. Monroe looked at us the way someone looks at a house that's about to collapse, with dread, with caution, with inevitability. She explained what she found in my blood work: markers of exposure, long-term transmission, signs of something living in my body that didn't originate there, something I couldn't have gotten alone. Her words were clinical, scientific, but they sliced through flesh and bone like a blade. She looked at Thomas, not at me. "Mr. Carter, we need to run the same tests on you." Silence. Thick, suffocating silence, like a storm gathering behind closed lips. He swallowed. Hard. Then he said the sentence that put my life into freefall. "There's something I probably should tell you both." My breath caught. My fingers clenched around the armrest so tightly my knuckles blanched. Dr. Monroe sat back slowly, giving him space. I stared, at him, through him, inside him. For a heartbeat, I hoped, irrationally, that he would say something simple, something fixable, something human. But instead, he looked at me with eyes I didn't recognize and spoke words I will never unhear. The truth began to surface, dark, thick, unstoppable. He inhaled, nostrils flaring, lips trembling, like a man about to jump off the edge. He inhaled, long and shaky, like a man trying to gather enough air to destroy someone he once loved. "I haven't been completely honest," he said. Time 0.5's. There it was, a simple sentence, a quiet sentence, but I felt it like a gunshot. Dr. Monroe stayed silent, eyes moving between us. She didn't rush him. I think she knew that whatever was about to come out of his mouth would cut deeper than anything she could say. I stared at him, waiting. I remember digging my nails into my palms just to feel something that made sense. Pain. Sharp. Real. He cleared his throat. "About my travel. About work." His voice wavered. He couldn't look at me for more than a second. Something inside me whispered, "This is it. Evelyn, breathe. How long? I asked. He blinked. What? How long have you been lying to me? My words came out low, almost calm. The kind of calm that only exists when you're standing in the epicenter of an earthquake and haven't realized the building is already collapsing. His shoulders sagged. Years, he murmured. That word echoed. Years, not months, not a mistake, not a one-time lapse. Years. I felt like the floor swayed beneath me. I reached for the side of the chair without even realizing it. My fingers were numb. Thomas, Dr. Monroe said gently, you need to be clear. She deserves that. He nodded, still staring at the wall. There was someone, he began. Someone from work. It started about 8 years ago. On a trip. I never meant for it to go anywhere, but it did. And it didn't really stop. He said it like he was talking about a bad habit, not a life he tore in two. My ears rang. I could barely hear my own voice when I whispered, 8 years. He looked at me then, just for a moment, and I saw guilt, thick, suffocating guilt, but also something I will never forgive. Resignation, as if he'd already made peace with hurting me long before he ever confessed. My chest tightened so much I thought I might pass out. I tried to speak, but all that came out was a broken sound. I was stupid, he continued, words tumbling over each other. We kept meeting on trips. It wasn't constant, but consistent enough. And then, 3 years ago, I got sick. The room shrank. Sick. Doctor. Monroe's eyes sharpened. Sick? How? He swallowed again, Adam's apple bobbing like it was fighting to stay down. I got tested, he said, at an urgent care when I was in San Diego. I thought it was just something I picked up. I thought maybe it was food poisoning or something. But they ran tests, and they told me... He paused, closed his eyes for a second. They told me I'd contracted an infection, one that usually comes from unprotected contact. They gave me medication. They told me I needed to tell my partner, to tell my wife, to make sure you got tested too. My skin went cold. He kept going. But I didn't, he said, voice barely more than a whisper. I told you it was just a minor infection from the gym. I took the pills. I thought it would go away. I thought if the numbers went down, I could just pretend it never happened. He looked at me, finally, and I saw a flicker of something like shame, fighting with cowardice. I was afraid you'd leave, he said. There it was, the truth behind the truth. He didn't lie because he loved me too much. He lied because he loved himself more. I leaned back, my head spinning. The air in the room felt thick, like breathing through wet fabric. So you, I said slowly, tasting the words like poison, you let them treat you. You knew you had something that could be passed to me, and you just came home, climbed into our bed, kissed me goodnight. For 3 years, without saying a word. He opened his mouth, closed it again. I thought it was gone, he said weakly. The last time they checked, they said it was under control. I didn't want to scare you. I didn't want to lose your double life. I cut in. He flinched. That one landed. Doctor. Monroe spoke then, voice calm but firm. Mr. Carter, you knowingly withheld important medical information from your wife. This isn't just about an affair. This is about her health, her safety, her right to know what she was exposed to. He looked like a child being scolded. But he wasn't a child. He was a grown man who gambled with my body. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. Not in front of him. What exactly did he give me? I asked, turning to Dr. Monroe. My voice shook on the last word. She hesitated, not because she didn't know, but because she knew that saying it out loud would carve another wound. Evelyn, she said softly, what we've seen in your results suggests that at some point in the last few years, you were exposed to a sexually transmitted infection. The markers indicate it's been in your system for a while. The good news is, it's manageable, treatable. We're already outlining your plan. But the source, her eyes moved to Thomas. The source matters because this was preventable. Preventable. Such an innocent word for something that felt like a betrayal written into my bloodstream. I felt sick, not just emotionally, physically. My stomach churned. I turned to him, my voice hollow. Did she know? The woman, did you tell her? He stared at the floor. That was all the answer I needed. A sound escaped me that I didn't recognize. Half laugh, half sob, all pain. So you put both of us at risk, I said. You didn't just betray me emotionally. You used my body as part of your lie. The room blurred for a moment. I had to blink several times to keep it from spinning. He reached for my hand. I'm sorry. Evelyn, I swear I never wanted to hurt you. I was stupid and selfish, and I thought if I just ignored it, it would disappear. I ended things with her. Months ago. I was going to tell you. I just didn't know how. I pulled my hand back like his skin burned. You were going to tell me. I repeated. When it killed me. When the doctor had to tell my children their mother got sick because their father couldn't keep his vows or his conscience. Tears finally spilled down my cheeks. They were hot, relentless, humiliating and freeing all at once. I trusted you with my body, I whispered, with my life, and you treated me like collateral damage. He pressed his hands over his face. I'm so sorry, he kept saying, like a broken recording. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But apologies are small things when your world has already shattered. Dr. Monroe gently placed a box of tissues beside me and spoke with the quiet care of someone who had seen this kind of devastation before. Evelyn, whatever you feel right now is valid. Anger, pain, numbness, all of it. We'll focus on your treatment and your health. But you are allowed to take space, emotionally and physically, from this situation. Space. I needed space. I needed air. Oh, I needed to get out of that suffocating little room where my marriage died. I stood up slowly. My knees shook so hard I had to grip the chair for balance. Evelyn, Thomas said, reaching for me again. Don't touch me, I said. The words came out calm, but inside I was screaming. I looked at him one last time in that room. The man I married. The man I grew old with. The man who sat beside me at graduations, at funerals, at holidays. And all I could see was a stranger who had worn my husband's face while he fed me lies. I don't know who you are, I told him, but you are not the man I married. I turned to Dr. Monroe. Please email me everything, I said quietly. My results, my treatment options. I'll follow up, just not with him. Then I walked out. My legs felt heavy, like each step was dragging 23 years behind me. The hallway seemed longer than it had that morning. The world outside was too bright, too loud, too normal. I stepped into the parking lot, and for a split second, I couldn't remember where I'd parked. My heart raced. My breath turned shallow. I braced my hand against a car that wasn't mine just to stay upright. In that moment, I realized something. My marriage hadn't been destroyed in that office. It had been eroding slowly, secretly, quietly, for years. The doctor's whisper didn't break it. It just finally showed me the bones. And standing there, trembling between the car rows, I understood. I had a choice now, to keep living inside a lie or to crawl out of it, torn and bleeding, but free. That realization didn't feel brave. It felt like grief. The drive home felt like steering through fog. I don't remember the streets. I don't remember the lights. I just remember the weight in my chest, the way my hands shook on the steering wheel, the echo of his words pounding in my skull. 8 years. An infection. He didn't tell me. When I pulled into the driveway, our house looked smaller, shabbier, like the illusion had peeled off and I was seeing the raw structure underneath. I sat there for a while, engine off, keys in my lap. How do you walk back into a place that suddenly feels like a crime scene? Inside, everything was exactly where we left it. His mug on the counter, the dish towel hanging crooked, the faint smell of his cologne on the air. I wanted to tear it all down, throw dishes, rip photos, scream until my throat bled. Instead, I sank onto the couch and buried my face in my hands. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Minutes, hours. Time was strange. At some point, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Amelia. "Hey, Mom, just checking in. You sounded tired last time. You okay?" My chest clenched. Was I okay? No, I was not okay. But how do you respond to your child with, "Your father has been lying to us for years, and I carry his betrayal in my blood." So I typed the safest lie I could manage. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a bit overwhelmed. I'll call you soon." I hit send and immediately felt guilty. Guilt on top of betrayal, on top of rage. So many layers I couldn't breathe through them. Later that evening, when Thomas came home, the air changed. I heard his keys in the lock, the door opening, the casual thud of his shoes against the mat. He stepped into the living room, paused when he saw me sitting stiffly on the couch. "Evelyn." I looked up slowly. He looked smaller than he did that morning. Shoulders drooped, eyes red. Time, 0.5s. For a fleeting second, a part of me, the part that had spent 23 years loving him, wanted to comfort him. That part of me made me the angriest. He sat down across from me, not beside me. Maybe he finally understood he'd lost that right. "I don't have any excuse," he said. "I was selfish. I was scared. I didn't know how to undo what I'd done, so I just kept going. And every day it got harder to tell you." "So, you didn't tell me at all," I said. "You let a doctor tell me what my husband had done." He winced. "I ended it," he said quietly. "Months ago. I swear to you. There's no one else now." I laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. "You think that's the point? You think this is about whether you still have someone on the side?" I shook my head. "This is about the fact that you valued your comfort more than my life. You made a decision about my body without my consent. You exposed me to something I never agreed to. You gambled with my health like I was just collateral in your fantasy." Tears slipped down his cheeks. I had seen him cry only a handful of times in our marriage. "I hate who I became," he whispered. "I don't even recognize myself. I kept telling myself I'd come clean, that I'd find the right moment, and the longer I waited, the more impossible it felt. And in the meantime," I said softly, "you came home. You ate my food. You slept in my bed. You smiled at our children, and you let me live in a reality that wasn't true." I looked around at the living room, the family photos, the anniversary frames, the little pieces of a life we had built. Was anything real? Thomas? I asked, my voice breaking. Did you ever really choose me? He leaned forward, hands outstretched, time 0.3s, desperate. Yes, he said. I chose you every day. I loved you. I still love you. What I did, it's not because you weren't enough. It was my weakness, my ego, my stupidity. I shook my head, tears falling freely now. Do you know how cruel it is to say that? I said. To tell me you loved me while you destroyed me. He put his face in his hands. I'll do anything, he said. Therapy, counseling, full honesty. You can have all my passwords, my phone, everything. I'll answer any question. I'll sleep on the couch. I'll move out if you want. Just, please, don't give up on us yet. Don't throw away 23 years over this. I stared at him, stunned. Over this, I repeated. Thomas, this isn't forgetting to take out the trash. This isn't a bad argument. This is a calculated, sustained betrayal. Years, lies layered on lies. And you didn't come clean. You got caught by my blood. I pressed a hand against my chest. Do you know what it feels like to be told in a doctor's office that your body is carrying proof your husband has been sleeping with someone else for years? My voice rose now, trembling, sharp. Do you know what it feels like to realize every time you kissed me, there was information you were hiding behind your teeth? I stood up, suddenly unable to stay seated. I keep asking myself, I whispered, more to myself than to him, where did I go wrong? Was I not attentive enough? Did I trust you too much? Did I ignore signs because I was afraid of being alone? I looked at him, the man I built a family with. But the truth is, I didn't go wrong by loving you, I said. You went wrong by breaking that love and then pretending you hadn't. Silence settled between us, heavy, final. That night, I slept in the guest room. I stared at the ceiling for hours, tracing cracks I'd never noticed before. Maybe they'd always been there. Maybe they were new. Either way, they felt like a metaphor. I realized something in that dark little room, surrounded by old boxes and spare blankets. I could survive losing him. I wasn't sure I could survive losing myself any further. The next few days moved like slow lava, heavy, hot, destructive. We circled each other in the house like ghosts. Sometimes we spoke. Sometimes we didn't. When we did, the words were fragile, like glass that might shatter if set down too hard. He asked if we could see a counselor. I said I wasn't ready. The truth was, I didn't know if I wanted to rebuild something that had been rotting from the inside for years. I went back to Dr. Monroe alone. She walked me through my treatment plan, my follow-up appointments, my options. She was kind, factual, and at one point she said something I didn't expect. Evelyn, you're allowed to be angry at him and still care about yourself. Don't let his mistakes make you abandon your own body. That sentence stuck with me. For so long, I'd taken care of everyone else, kids, husband, house. Now I had to take care of the one person I had neglected most, myself. One afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table with a blank sheet of paper and wrote 2 columns. Stay, leave. Under stay, I wrote, history, shared memories, familiarity. The man he used to be. Under leave, I wrote, safety, self-respect, truth. The chance to know who I am without his shadow. The leave side scared me more. And that's when I knew. Courage isn't always staying and fighting. Sometimes it's walking away from a burning house and not running back in to save the furniture. That night, I called Amelia. My voice shook, but I told her more than I'd told anyone else. Your father did something, I said carefully. something that hurt me, hurt our marriage. I'm okay. I'm getting treatment. I'm being looked after. But the truth is, I don't think I can stay with him. There was a silence, then a sharp inhale. Did he hurt you physically? She asked, voice tight. In a way, I said, not with his fists, with his choices. She didn't ask for details. Maybe she didn't need them. Mom, she said, voice thick with emotion, I love Dad, but I love you more. And if he broke your trust like that, you don't owe him your life. You owe yourself peace. Peace, a small, fragile word, but it glowed at the end of a very long, dark tunnel. The next morning, I woke up and knew what I had to do. I didn't feel strong. I didn't feel brave. I felt exhausted. But sometimes decisions are made in exhaustion because there's no energy left to lie to yourself. I packed a suitcase, just one, a few clothes, my medications, the photo of me and the kids at the beach, years ago, when life felt simpler. I left the wedding album on the shelf. When he came home that evening and saw the suitcase by the door, his face went gray. Evelyn, what are you doing? My voice was quieter than I expected, steady, like it had finally found its own spine. I'm leaving, I said. He shook his head as if he could shake the reality away. No, you can't. We can work through this. We're not done. Please. We might not be done as people, I said softly, but we are done as husband and wife. I can't share a roof with someone who could hide something like that from me. I can't sleep beside someone who looked me in the eye and lied while my body paid the price. He stepped closer, tears streaming down his face. You're my whole life, he whispered. I made a terrible mistake. Mistakes are things you trip over once, I said, my own tears flowing now. You built a life on this. You renewed this choice every day for years. That's not a mistake, Thomas. That's a pattern. He collapsed onto the chair, sobbing. I'd never seen him that broken. I wanted to rush to him, to hold him, to say it would be okay. That's what I'd done for years. But this time, I wrapped my arms around myself instead. I hope you get help, I said quietly. I hope you face what you've done, not just to me, but to yourself. I hope one day you become someone you can respect. But I can't be here to watch that process. I have to go learn who I am without being the woman you lied to. He looked up at me, eyes red, voice hoarse. Is there really no chance? He asked. I hesitated, not to give him hope, but to acknowledge the death of something that once meant everything to me. I don't know what the future holds, I said. All I know is right now, I need distance, space, honesty with myself. And I can't have that while I'm still trying to hold together a marriage that's already in pieces. I picked up the suitcase. My hands shook. My heart pounded. Every step felt like walking through wet cement. At the door, I turned back one last time. Take care of yourself, I said, and don't ever do to another woman what you did to me. Then I walked out. The air outside felt cold, but clean, and for the first time in a very long time, the weight on my chest loosened, just a little. I moved into a small apartment across town. Nothing fancy. Second floor, thin walls, a view of a parking lot instead of the cozy garden I'd tended for years. But it was mine, my space, my silence. The first night there, I cried until my pillow was damp. I cried for the marriage I lost, for the years I'd never get back, for the woman I'd been, trusting, naive, loyal to a version of love that didn't protect her. I also cried for him, if I'm honest. for the man he could have been if he'd chosen truth over fear. Healing didn't come in a wave. It came in fragments, little moments. The first time I laughed at a movie by myself. The first time I cooked dinner just the way I liked it, without adjusting it to someone else's taste. The first time I looked in the mirror and thought, you survived. There were hard days too. Days when I questioned everything. Was I too harsh? Should I have stayed? Could forgiveness have been possible? But every time I remembered the chair in that doctor's office, the way she whispered, you need to sit down for this, the way my husband's confession felt like a knife inside my chest, I knew I'd made the only choice that honored the woman inside me who had been ignored for too long. I realized something important. Love is not proven by how much you're willing to tolerate. It's proven by how much you're willing to protect yourself when someone stops protecting you. I learned that you can be both broken and brave, that leaving isn't a sign you gave up too quickly. Sometimes it's proof you finally stopped abandoning yourself. And I learned this. Trust is fragile, but so is self-worth. If you sacrifice one to keep the other, you eventually lose both. Now, when I go to the doctor, I sit upright. I ask questions. I listen closely to them, to my body, to that small voice in my chest that I used to silence for the sake of peace. I'm still healing. There are days I still wake up reaching for a man who isn't beside me anymore. There are nights I still wonder what would have happened if I'd noticed the signs sooner, or if nothing had ever happened at all. But there's also something new, a quiet strength, a sense that I walked through fire and, even though I'm still scorched, I'm standing. And until now, I still don't know. If that day hadn't happened, if the doctor hadn't whispered those words, if I had never seen the truth carved into my blood work, would I have realized how strong I am today? Maybe not. And that's the strangest part. The worst day of my life also forced me to finally choose myself. If you've stayed with me until now, thank you. Thank you for listening to my story, for sitting with my pain, for walking through the quiet horrors and small victories with me. If you've ever been through something like this, if someone you loved hid a truth that shattered you, please hear me. You are not alone. You're not stupid for trusting. You're not weak for hurting. And you're not selfish for choosing yourself after being betrayed. Sometimes the most terrifying decision you'll ever make is to walk away from the life you thought you wanted, so you can finally live the life you deserve.